All right, as promised, I'm doing it. My redo of my Inheritance trilogy, Should You Read. This was my first Should You Read on my channel forever ago. I won't private it. It'll exist, I guess, if you want to see baby Angela attempting to describe this series. And I'm gonna be honest, I don't know if I'll be better at it this time around, but I wanted a new video so I can put it in my Jemisin reading guide and I don't know, my new-ish thoughts? Who knows? Who knows if I have better reformed thoughts, but I am better at talking to a camera now, and I have a better camera that I'm talking to. So let's revamp it. It's been 4.5 years. It's time. So what's my experience with this trilogy? I've read it twice, and I've read everything. I think when I first did my Should You Read trilogy, I hadn't read the novella and the short stories, but I've read all of those twice through. It was my second Jemisin, so I read the 5th season, and then I read the Inheritance trilogy, so that's the order I went into it, because I read the 5th season because I heard about it from a friend, and I was like, oh, this is really good, as most people do when they like Jemisin. And then I was like, well, what should I read next? And I went back to publication order. And the first published series is the Inheritance trilogy. Now, this is not her first written book, the 100,000 Kingdoms. The first written book is The Killing Moon, but it just was not the first published. And I talk about that in the Jemisin reading guide, so you can go see that video if you want to know about where should I start, reading order, all those little tidbits, okay? So that's how I came into it. First read, I read it solo. I actually started it before BookTube, finished it as some of the first things I did on BookTube, hence it's my first Should You Read. And then this last time, I buddy read it with a friend, and I did audio this time. First time only physically read, this time audio and immersion read it. And I love it both times. It's not a Robin Miles narrator for anything but the novella, which was different, but I actually really liked it. So that's my general experience, spoiler-free at the top. Now, what are you going to get in this trilogy? And this is the part where I never know how to explain what this trilogy is about without spoilers. I'm not going to spoil it. But essentially, Jemisin's exploring a world where immortality and mortality meet. And immortality and mortality can both have powers that basically mess with reality. Godlike powers, you can mess with the laws of the universe depending on if you're immortal with powers or if you're an immortal god, and your godlike powers are tied to your essence. And there are gods that are like the parents of gods. The kind of system that she creates, this religious system, this pantheon, is inspired by a lot of religions we have on Earth. It's not going to be tied to just one. The one it reminds me the most of, especially in terms of the grudges, the pettiness, how they get involved in human affairs, is Greek mythology and the stories that I have read from there. But it's not Greek mythology. It's just what it reminds me of. Now, this intersection of mortality and mortality is for sure the thing that you're most exploring throughout the trilogy. But specifically, you're actually looking at pivotal moments of transition and change on an individual level, on a societal level for both immortals and mortals. And what does that mean for the individual, for the society? And it's very, moments of change. How do they affect you? In the kind of thought experiment of what does change look like to someone where time does not matter? Because these immortal creatures, time does not matter. I think when you start off the first book, the one I can talk about the most, because at the back of the book sort of stuff, we have these gods that are imprisoned by this kingdom. And they've been imprisoned for, I believe, thousands of years, which is both egregious to them, but it's not because of the time. It's because they are imprisoned, if that makes sense. Whereas us as mortals, it's oh my gosh, how long have you been imprisoned? But for them, time is not the same thing. And also that just affects their relationships with individuals and what they choose to care about and what they think is a punishment or not, and things like that. So that's what you're kind of getting. You get a lot of origin stories of the earth and powers because of this kind of pantheon. And I just really love every arc. Other tropes or trope-adjacent things you'll definitely get the vibes of here. It reminded me the most of stories where you have fae and mortals, specifically in the whole, can you trust them or not? Can you take what they're saying at face value? Are they going to twist your words? Especially in this first book, one of our characters is part of this royal family. She's kind of brought in against her will, which means she has power over these gods. But the gods are very good at twisting your orders to then maybe kill you or hurt someone you care about, etc. So it has that whole, be careful exactly how you say something. It has that gothic sort of energy in the first book in particular. So that's some tropes. And then, of course, like I said, the messiness of a Greek mythology pantheon where there's just really petty family squabbles. And you're why are gods having these petty squabbles? Why are gods petty? And I think part of that is the lack or the stagnant growth that can come with immortality that Jemisin is playing around with and postulating, and it's just like really cool. I don't know. I really love exploring those ideas in this. You're also going to get narrative frameworks, which is something Jemisin has really loved doing in a lot of her works, and something I really love with a lot of authors. In particular, the first 2 books have a unique narrative framework, and the 3rd book even comments on that and goes, I'm not doing that. So let's just talk about what the 3 books are, because it is a series you have to read in order. But it's not a traditional trilogy in that there is an overarching plot over all 3 books. They are 3 books set in the same world, and you do feel like where it ends is an ending, is a resting point, but it's not traditional. Like, it doesn't feel like how a fantasy trilogy would feel stereotypically. And each book is a different point of view, a different problem-solving situation, and it's a different time jump. So I think book 2 is 10 years from book 1, and book 3 is like 100 years from book 2, and you have a different perspective each time, and kind of a different narrative device. So the first book, it's really fun figuring out what the narrative device is. If you liked that in the 5th season, you're probably going to enjoy that here. It's just very like, who is this other voice in italics? What are we doing in telling this story? It's very fun. The second book's one of my favorite books. It's also a story of redemption, and I really love stories of redemption, but the narrative framework of that is also just like, it's so sweet. It's so sweet. When that gets revealed at the end, like why it was framed and told the way it was, you're just like, oh, at least I am. And I'm just a sap. But the third one, like I said, it's a different point of view. And they're like, I'm not going to be cute like that. This is going to be a straightforward story, no flashbacks. Let's go. And it generally is. And I like that one as well. And like Jemisin, I think, is really good at giving each character their own voice, their own cadence, their own way of thinking. So each book feels very much like a Jemisin book. Like they feel like a Jemisin book. And so and if you don't like the first book, I'm not going to say you're suddenly going to love the second and third book. But the voice of the character in the third book does not sound like the voice of the character in the first book, if that makes sense. And the last thing I wanted to bring up in this quick should you read is the novella and the short stories. Do you need to read them? Are they necessary? When do you read them? So in general, it's publication order for me. Oh, and a big thing I like to bring up. I forgot to bring this up. If you get the bind up, it looks like this. It doesn't have these kind of extra addition things that Orbit sometimes puts at the end of its paperbacks. And if you do that and you read the third book, there is like a really, really tiny short story that you won't get to read just because you don't have access to it. And it's one of my favorite little short stories that I've ever read in my entire life, and that's the only place you can get it. I'm trying to see if I can have a copy. Yeah, let's get out my... So... and this is the same, like, if you just have to get them the single printing, but in the Kingdom of Gods, the third book, if you don't get the section that has, like, the dark edges in an Orbit book, and it should have a section that says short story, not the end, it's one of the reasons why I sat down and filmed my first Should You Read. I was just like, oh my gosh, I feel so complete. I was so happy. So this bind up here does not have that. It does, however, have the only way you can get the printed version of the novella, The Awakened Kingdoms. I believe that's the name of it. I don't like the names of any of the books in this series. Okay? I don't enjoy that. And then you can only get an e-copy of the other little short stories. There's like 3 little short stories that take place interspersed throughout the series, but you don't have to read them throughout the series. You can just wait till the end, in my opinion. The novella is maybe my favorite part of this whole world. It is so sweet. It is about a godling that is born and them learning how to be a god and how to interact with people. And I mentioned at the start of this video that gods are in some ways more constrained than mortals because they have an essence and they have to be true to that essence. And if they accidentally trigger their antithesis, something bad happens and things like that. So we have this godling, and the circumstances around their birth I can't talk about because it would spoil things in the trilogy, but they are having to deal with the circumstances around their birth, also figure out who they are, be frustrated that they aren't meeting the expectations they feel they have to make, and they're just like childlike, more immortal, who like doesn't understand time, so the way they tell the story can get very stream of conscious and cute. We get to visit another part of the world. For the most part, we've spent the majority of this trilogy in one part of this globe. this one central domain. You hop around a bit in the third book, but for the most part, culturally, we're with the Ameri. And we learn a little bit about other cultures through our characters who have different ancestry. But we actually, in this one, get to go to the Dare. And they are a fascinating matriarchal culture who has actually gone through a lot since the beginning of the series. And so getting that little cultural insight, watching this godling with this most adorable voice. Both times I've read this novella, it's been like my favorite time because I do think this voice would be too long for a novel. But for the 100 pages I'm with her, I'm just like, this is amazing. I love you. And I just love her journey. And it fits with the theme of the rest of it, where this is coming of age, this is change, transition, transformation. It's great. I really enjoy it. So, yeah, it's my slightly incoherent should you read for this series. It's really hard to talk about without major spoilers, and I do want people to read it, so I do not want to do that. I will say, if you are expecting the 5th season, this is not the 5th season. It's its own thing. It does have Jemisin's style, has a lot of the things she likes to play with, but it's not the 5th season. So I feel like that expectation game has to be set very early. If anything, I think there are some characters people get more attached to in this series. For example, the 3rd book follows a character you've been introduced to since the 1st book, and seeing his arc all the way through is incredibly satisfying, in my opinion. So in some ways, you get a little more payoff because you're not at this apocalyptic breakneck pace that the 5th season's at for me. But I just want to set that, I think it's amazing because I'll read Jemisin's grocery list, but if the only thing you've read is the 5th season, this is not going to feel the same. It will probably still be good for you, but it's I'm expectation management here. All right, let me know if you've read this series, anything you would add spoiler-free in the comments below for anyone else finding this video. If you just want to leave an emoji to let me know you're here, I don't know, leave something that reminds you of a god. It could be like a lightning bolt for Zeus or something like that. And otherwise, if you liked it, subscribe if you want to, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.